I didn't trade a single meme coin. I didn't flip NFTs. I didn't get lucky on some 100x token. Yet, I made over $1 million in crypto by building a business. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how I did it, step by step, with no BS. Everyone in crypto is chasing the casino. Everyone essentially is playing a losing game where most people end up losing more money than they ever end up making. And a big problem which is inherent of social media is that the people who lose end up not talking about it, end up not sharing their story out of fear of being judged. Most people would be far better off building a business than trading crypto, meme coins, NFTs, you name it. In fact, there's a post I made some time ago where I shared that 60% of all meme coin traders have lost money, 5% made no money, 24% made less than $100. Only a small, very, very small percentage ended up making $1 million trading meme coins. And what I actually did, I went back today and I wanted to check in on the numbers. I knew that the meme coin casinos had closed for some considerable time. And I wanted to see, all right, out of every single person who's participated in this meta in meme coins, what percentage of people made over $1 million trading meme coins? And what I found was mind-blowing. Only 0.0024% of everyone who participated in the meme coin frenzy ended up making over $1 million in profit. To give you a bit of a comparison, 4% of tech startups end up making 1 million in revenue. And from that 4%, 0.1% end up making $1 million in profit. So let's just compare those two numbers, 0.1% and 0.0024%. Where are you more likely to make $1 million? Let me save you the math. I've crunched the numbers and you are exactly 42 times more likely to make $1 million starting up your own business than you are trading meme coins. I want you to remember, speculators ride waves, builders create them. Now, early on in my trading journey, in my discovery of cryptocurrency, of meme coins, of NFTs, I quickly found out that I wasn't the best trader. Not only was I not the best trader, I was very average. And a lot of the time, ended up losing more money than I was making. Now, it was a tough battle towards acceptance, essentially forfeiting my right to say that I was a good trader. But eventually I started realizing that I was able to bring in consistently revenue through business versus the profit that I would once in a blue moon make by trading. And it was once I sat down with myself and actually looked at my profit sheet. I didn't just look at my business revenue. I segmented all my profits for that year into profit that I made from trading, profit that I made from working, profit that I made through Unfungible, profit that I made through the side hustle, profit that I made here, there. I crunched it all down on a spreadsheet and I ended up realizing that my time was best spent building my business. And this is the same realization I want you to make. I don't want to go off and assume that you are not one of the top 0.0024% of traders. However, let's be honest. Most people, by definition, are not part of this top, elite, prestigious group of traders. Most people are far better off just building their own business rather than burning their entire capital chasing and following the meme coin trenches. Now, for us personally, one of our biggest realizations was a pivot that we made more than a year ago now, where we decided to experiment with spaces And we quickly were able to find a product market fit with that service that we created. Something I think we did exceptionally well at the time was finding our niche and segmenting ourselves in them, hyper niching down to the point where our addressable market was small, yet we could divide and conquer significantly faster and more effectively. I remember when we first launched our space service, where we manage, maintain, host, take care of the guest invites, basically take care of everything that a space would require. We decided to not only niche down to that service, but also niche down to gaming ecosystems and gaming NFTs only. And those were the target audience that we would target at first, because we had our networks already well established there, and it was a niche full of potential. I remember quickly from there, after our first month of launching this product, Leon and I looked at each other, and I remember we were on a meeting looking through our numbers, our revenue. How are we doing? How is the business doing? We both looked at each other and had this eureka moment, because all of a sudden we could see this product that is sticky, that is value driven, and that is very easy to scale. And this is exactly how I want you to think about making your first $100,000 through your business. We essentially got started with that product by hitting up a lot of our founder friends, reaching out to them, seeing what they were curious about, what they were interested in. And only when we found that that was a problem that we could end up servicing them for, then and only then did we end up pitching them and starting with our very first few clients. From there, I remember it was maybe 3 months or 4 months after the start of that service, we had our first ever 100K month. Now look, I know a service like this can seem very daunting. Spaces as a service requires a big operation. It requires a big network. It requires a lot of connections. However, this isn't necessarily the road I want you to end up thinking about. There are a lot of solo business ideas that you can end up taking advantage of. You could do ghostwriting, you could do social media management, you could do KOL management, influencer marketing, the list goes on and on and on. But what I want you to get into is that frame of mind, that mindset of how do I make my first $100,000? And really at that time for us, the systems that we had built weren't that necessarily complicated, especially when we compare them to our systems today. The systems that you have as a $100,000 business are more or less simple and look the same for businesses across industries. Now, once you get to 100,000, the next goal is $1 million. That big 1 million. In order to get there, the 3 core pillars that we had to focus on and master were: number 1, solve a real problem. This is where you want to think about what is a real problem, a real pain that exists in your target audience's lives. Maybe they spend a lot on influencer marketing and they don't necessarily see the return anymore. Maybe they spend too much time on something that you think you can help with. Whatever that is, find a real pain that exists in your ideal customer avatar and find a solution for it. Number 2, own the distribution. One of our biggest advantages with the space program was that we owned all of our distribution. We currently have a very rich and diverse network of audience, of guest speakers that we can end up connecting any brand that walks through our door to. In fact, in order for us to scale from 100,000 to 1 million, we've had to think outside of just the gaming niche that we were positioned around. We've had to conquer things like AI, NFTs, consumer crypto, and many other different niches. And the number 3 core pillar is think in systems, not spikes. What I mean by this is I don't want you to go thinking in how can we get to 1 million in just 1 month. Instead, what that growth is very likely going to look like is very slow at first, and then it'll start to quickly become exponential. Of course, you're going to meet a lot of ceilings across the way. You're going to plateau a lot. You're going to face different challenges. And those are very much the same challenges that you would find in $1 million business in any industry. So something I would highly recommend whenever you reach those milestones is look outside of just crypto, because I bet you, from my personal experience, a lot of the things we were facing as a $100,000 company were similar problems that other $100,000 companies outside of our industry were facing and have already solved. So we can borrow a lot of that knowledge and use it for our own. The same goes for $1 million, for 5 million, for 10 million. The list goes on and on and on. Our problems in crypto are not just unique to crypto. Look outside for guidance, because I guarantee you the answer already exists outside of our industry. Look, if I was to start from scratch today, say I have no money in my bankroll, I have no audience whatsoever, I'm starting fresh, the first thing I would do before I would go ahead and create an X account, before I would go ahead and think about my content strategy, how would I acquire customers, forget about that. The very first and most important thing that I want you to focus on is what is a real world problem that your ideal customer currently faces that pains them so much to the point that they are willing to pay to have that problem solved. What is that problem that exists for you and your industry, and what is your solution for it? Once you have that problem, the solution is essentially the product or the service that you end up offering. For example, Kaito, a big dominant InfoFi platform, solved the problem of influencer marketing. A lot of people were going to influencer agencies to spend lump sums of money. I've heard budgets ranging from $100,000 to $1 million spent on those agencies that all end up following these services back to a select group of KOLs, a select group of influencers. What Kaito did is take that budget that founders were already spending on influencer marketing and make it so that that sum of money is distributed evenly, not to the highest name, the biggest name, but instead to those that champion your project the most on socials, namely on Twitter. And that's a huge niche. That's a huge problem to solve, the influencer marketing problem. From there, once you have that pain point that you know exists and you know people are willing to pay money for, to fix, and you know what your solution to that problem is, then and only then should you start creating content. If your content is not based around your business, just forget about it. If you're not starting your content creation journey with an end goal in mind, with an ideal customer in mind, then you're writing to no one. You're speaking to no one. Your tweets will just sound absolutely soulless and irrelevant. And this is where I look to accounts like my co-founder, Leon, like Kelano, two great examples of people who haven't shot or aimed for mass followings, hundreds of thousands of followers to start building their businesses. Instead, Leon literally closed our first client for Unfungible on his very first YouTube video. No subscribers at the time, no real views, yet he was able to close a customer from one YouTube video. The reason he was able to do that was because he had that problem in mind. He had that solution for it. He knew who his target audience was. Even his first video that he was filming, he was talking directly to that target audience. And guess what happens? When you're someone struggling, well, you have a certain pain, and you're watching this video and this guy is literally addressing your pain. He's not summarizing, he's not generalizing, he's not casting a net so wide that it ends up feeling so impersonal. When you're watching a video and that person is talking straight and directly to you, guess what happens? You're a lot more likely to reach out to that person and be like, hey, that was amazing. What a great video. I'd love to learn how we can work together. And this is my message to all you degens. You can keep gambling, or you can choose to build something that lasts. Crypto doesn't need more pumps, it needs more problems solved. We didn't win because we were early, had insider information, or an unremarkable advantage over others. We won because we simply executed. If you yourself want to win, make sure to follow me on Twitter, or if you're watching this video on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to me on YouTube. Or if you're thinking of building something, or perhaps already building something of your own, comment what you're working on, and I'll give you some feedback. See you next time.